Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us here on the Pegasus World Cup live handicapping preview show. I am Gino Buccola alongside David Aragona. David, you ready to rock and roll? We got a big Saturday coming up.
There is a lot to dive into on this card, and I'm excited to get into the handicapping. 13 races, basically oversubscribed fields in just about every one of them with 8 stakes events. So there's a lot to talk about, and I'm excited to do so with you. It's been a little while since we've done one of these, but we got a really good card to talk about.
Yeah, 7 graded stakes, and I think we have an all graded stakes mandatory payout in the pick 6. Yep. We'll take you through some of the wagers they have, starting with race number 1 with an estimated pick 5 pool of about $1 million. They think they'll get in that early pick 5 pool. We're going to go through the pick 6 races, and then we'll answer any questions that you may have. So start sending them in if they're about the Pegasus World Cup or any of the races in the later part of the card. If you have any questions about races earlier on the card, we can answer some of those. Before we do, a little bit of housekeeping. We want to let you know about a new sponsor that Daily Racing Form has, and the sponsor of this show, morningline.io. Now, when you think about old school ownership, it locks you in with fees, with markups, and no exit. Morningline offers a modern alternative. License access to elite racehorses with flexibility to buy, sell, or trade anytime. No ongoing costs, only on morningline.io. David, if some of the folks out there have not gotten their Daily Racing Form PPs, you can do so now. As you were pointing out, 7 graded stakes races. We have help for you with the past performances, with the clocker reports every racing day over at Gulfstream Park, with the DRF picks as well. Mike Welsh has been doing a fantastic job, as always, leading the way with those clocker reports. So everyone wants to head on over to shop.drf.com so you can follow along with us, because that's one of the things, David, we like to do on these shows. We can pull up the past performances and follow along and give a little bit of insight as to how we handicap and maybe answer some questions about horses that others are interested in.
Yeah, that's what we want to do here. We want to go through our handicapping processes. We'll pull up the PPs, like Gino said. We can show some replays, go through some trainer stats, talk about the way that we view things, how we separate these horses, dissect some pace scenarios using Timeform US. So we're going to go through all of that. We're not going to be able to get to every horse. And if you want to talk about every horse, we did do videos for all of these stakes races on the Daily Racing Form YouTube channel. You can check those out. We went horse by horse. So some quick math. I think we talked about 100 horses across all the stakes races. So you can find that there. But yeah, Gino said, drop a comment. Let us know if you have anything that we specifically should touch on as we handicap these races. But Gino, want to get started?
Yeah, let's dive on in. So just to set the scene for you one more time, first post is at 11 o'clock a.m. Eastern time, because we have a big day with 13 races. Early pick 5 gets started right there. And then we will focus in on a mandatory payout rainbow pick 6 sequence that is all graded stakes races. We're going to pull up our Daily Racing Form past performances and dive on in. So we're going to start, I believe, in race number 8, right, David?
Yeah, let's start with race number 8. Let's go through the Rainbow 6 because of that mandatory payout that you said. And if we get done a little early before the hour is over, maybe we can touch on a couple of the other stakes races earlier on in the day. But I think we'll have plenty to dissect in this Rainbow 6.
Yeah, they're projecting and hoping for about $4 million in this pool, which will go off at around 2:41 Eastern time. That's the post time, probably a few minutes after that. Well, they'll try to get as much money in the pools as possible. So from a starting standpoint, David, there's been a horse who is extremely talented down on the inside, Life and Times, who is 2 for 2, hasn't really been tested. He just won a first level allowance race on December the 6th over at Aqueduct. He is now a newly turned 5-year-old. What's the most interesting about him, though, is kind of not even what's on the page. It's that when he's been working out in the mornings, he recently dusted a horse named Accelerize, who just came back and won the grade 3 Louisiana over at Fairgrounds last week. So if you're just sort of looking at how good he is in the mornings, and you can watch some of those works on First.tv, he just seemed like he handled a graded stakes winner pretty easily in that most recent work.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people were off Accelerize in that Louisiana Stakes last week because Life and Times outworked him in that drill prior to the race.
I think it was January 10th, right? Yeah.
Yes, I believe it was 2 works back for Life and Times in his PPs, and I'm showing his last victory on the screen here. He just won with consummate ease against overmatched allowance competition. But yeah, that horse Accelerize, I mean, he ran so well, improving on his prior form. Maybe he was doing better than people thought coming into that workout and the race. So that has to flatter Life and Times. I think a lot of bettors are going to be aware of that. He's going to be a very short price in this race. This horse is all upside at this point. I mean, Gino, it's kind of amazing that he went off at 11-1 on debut like he was some kind of secret. I mean, it did take him a while to get to the races. He didn't debut till the end of his 4-year-old season, and he was gelded prior to that. So I'm sure there were some issues getting him to the races. But I mean, he has just been so impressive in both prior starts. And it's not like he was beating nobody last time, even though he was so impressive in winning. I mean, we'll take a look at the chart for this race. The horse that was second to him, Dreamlike, he's pretty good. I mean, he was grade 1 placed once upon a time. He came back and won his next race with a 94 buyer. So Life and Times was smashing a pretty good horse last time, and he's going to be tough in here. But I do wonder how you see this race setting up for him, Gino, from a pace standpoint, because drawing the rail is not ideal for a horse like this.
Completely agree. David, even in his debut, he beat a horse named Time to Win, who has come back and since won twice, I think with 100 plus buyer and then like a 92 buyer speed figure. So both of his races, he handled some pretty solid horses who have come back and run well. And I actually saw, I think you posted and said, wow, if this horse took a shot in the Pegasus World Cup, would he be live, right? Like just coming off of like his recent, buzz. I agree with you. I think the rail draw could be a little bit tricky here. And to be honest, we start the conversation with him because he's been brilliant in his 2 starts. But the horse who actually earned the best last out buyer speed figure is Knightsbridge, the 6, who's been a little bit of a tricky horse, throughout his career. Because, I mean, you can see a couple of his victories have been incredible, in particular those first 2 to start the career. When you win by 10 lengths and 9 lengths, there's always that, sky is the limit feeling with the horse. And then he came back and probably was a little bit disappointing in his 3rd start in the Perryville. I mean, overall, the body of work is not bad. Now, in that Mr. Prospector last out, Waidabario was supposed to run in that race. He ended up getting scratched. So it ended up being a much softer race than it looked like on paper, but he's no slouch. And he's capable of putting up pretty big efforts here. And I think he might even be quicker than Life and Times early on.
He's a nice horse. I don't know if he needs to be as aggressively ridden as he would have to be to make the lead over Life and Times, because they're going to have to send that horse from the rail to make sure he doesn't get shuffled back. And there's other speed in this race too. And Junior Alvarado typically is not the most aggressive rider coming out of the starting gate. But look, Knightsbridge has a lot of talent, as you said. I think you covered his career pretty well. I am a little concerned, Gino, about him coming back in just 28 days, because this is a horse that needed a lot of time between almost all of his prior starts. And it is a good sign that he's finally putting some races back to back without those layoff lines. But now he's making his 3rd start of this form cycle. And I do wonder if there could be a regression coming, because he really wasn't beating much last time. He did it easily, but this is a big class test for him, kind of like it is for Life and Times as well. I do think you might get a little better than the 6-5, because I think Life and Times is going to take a lot of money in this race. But I didn't feel like this was one where it was only among these 2 horses. I think you could make some cases for others as well.
I completely agree, especially if Knightsbridge does and Life and Times end up putting a little pressure on each other early on, right? If Life and Times try to hold that position, then you have Knightsbridge going after them. There are a couple others in here who I think could probably even show speed, like Con Compania has some speed in there, can also be part of it. Back him up, I don't think wants to be too far out of it either. If I'm playing this race, I'm actually looking for another horse that I think can take advantage if there is a fast early pace. The 2 horses that I looked at, David, that I thought were kind of interesting and maybe bettable in here were the 5 Tour Player and the 9 Nelson Avenue. I thought they could be the horses to possibly take advantage. Don't know how good they are. I don't know. I mean, on speed figures and stuff, we're not going to see the brilliance like we do with Life and Times and with Knightsbridge. But I think those are the horses who might be able to get the trip if things go a little crazy early on.
Yeah, for me, I'm not the biggest fan of Tour Player. When I did our stakes preview with Mike Beer, he was making a case for this horse as well. I couldn't quite get on board. I'm always a little skeptical of these horses that leave the Bob Baffert stable and how much upside they're going to have after that. But there is a case to be made for him for sure. I was much more interested in the number 9 Nelson Avenue of those 2 that you mentioned. And he's actually the horse that I would be looking forward to betting in this race. I know he looks a little light on the buyer speed figures. I'll flip on over to the Timeform USPPs because I like to do a speed figure comparison, takes pace into account. Sometimes it tells a slightly different story. When you see Life and Times, he's got a 119, 125. Knightsbridge has gotten into the low 120s. Nelson Avenue, when you look at the Timeform US speed figures, he's really not that far off those 2 favorites. And I like that in his last couple of races, he has shown the ability to rate off horses. Joel Rosario kind of taught him to do so in the last couple of times. He didn't seem like he was the most comfortable with it in that Parks Dirt Mile, but he still finished well enough to get the job done. And then last time, he was beaten by a pretty good horse at Bishop's Bay. And you can see in Timeform US, there are a couple of blue color-coded pace figures for that race, indicating that that's a race that had a relatively slow early pace and it favored horses that had the jump on Nelson Avenue, one of which was the winner. And he was coming up the rail in the late stages. I thought he put in a pretty good effort to get within about a half length of Bishop's Bay at the end of that race. And I've watched some of his workouts for this Fred Hooper, Gino. And I just like what I've seen because he's been working in the morning in company with Jody's Pride, who I think we're going to talk about a little bit later in one of the other stakes races. And to my eye, he's been going a little better than Jody's Pride in the morning. So just feel like he's coming into this race doing really well. You can see he's in the pocket here, going to come up through on the inside of those leaders and maybe not really wanted to run through on the inside of horses, but I like the way he finishes. And with this outside post that he's drawn in this race, he's not going to have to deal with kickback, which sometimes is an issue at Gulfstream. And I just think he's going to give a good account of himself in this race.
I think he gets a great trip. And if you're just playing the rival game, like you talked about, what price would Bishop's Bay be in here, or how competitive would he be? He'd be a top tier contender. He'd absolutely be right in the conversation with the other 2 horses who are going to take a lot of money. He's experienced. He never runs a bad race. And this horse was right there on the wire with him. So I completely agree with you. I was looking at outside of the top 2 who will take all the money, who are the bettable horses. I got to your top pick and Mike Beer's top pick. So, those are the horses who I'll be maybe looking to include in some of the multi-exotic wagers. And remember, send in any questions that you have, any comments. If you are curious for us to pull up a chart or something with the Daily Racing Form PPs, we'd love to help you out there.
Yeah, I think we got a question here. With these competitive races, the odds really drive the decisions more than ever. What are other factors that are separators when it's so tight? That's a good question because there are tough decisions to make in these races, Gino. And sometimes I think one of the separators can be knowing what you think the odds are going to be at post time, because that can be a real X factor in some of these races with so much money coming in late. Hopefully, it's a little bit less of a factor when the pools are so large on a day like Pegasus World Cup Day. But some advice that I would give is to use the DRF projected odds, which give you a real sense of where the betting is going to go based on the double payouts in the prior race. So you just have a better confidence in what price you're getting, and that alone allows you to bet with a little more confidence.
Yeah, and I think when you're talking about what are the factors that you're looking at, right? When you feel like horses might be evenly matched, that's when you're going to bring things in like pace, right? How does the race shape up, especially at a track like Gulfstream Park? Maybe on the main track, if you're having to go, for me, if I'm making a decision between a horse that can sit a little bit closer versus a deep closer at Gulfstream, I might lean towards the horse who has a little bit more positional speed, David. It might be different at a different track or on the turf course, but I let pace and price dictate for me most of the time the decisions that I'm going to make, because I want the horses who I think are going to get the better setup in each particular race at the better price. I try to, for me, have them combined together with who gets the trip at the right price. And I agree with you. Can you project what you think horses might be? Because we all love looking at a horse that's 10-1 on the morning line, but we know sometimes that horse might not be 10-1 on the morning line, right? So it doesn't do you any good when that horse ends up at 5-2 or 3-1 if you didn't realize that was going to happen. So sometimes can you predict the horses that are going to get bet down? Maybe we'll talk about one a little later in Tapan Street.
Yeah, I mean, and the other thing I would say along those lines, Gino, is I think the questioner was kind of getting at that there's a lot of smart money out there, and horses get bet down, and sometimes we feel like it's just wise to follow the money, even if it goes against our handicapping opinions, because often the horses that get bet more than you think they should end up winning the race. But the beauty of something like Pegasus World Cup Day or Breeders' Cup Day or Derby Day is there's so much quality in these races, and you will see horses that maybe you have an opinion about or you think has hidden ability that will go off as prices because these races are competitive. There are a lot of talented horses that just will inevitably slip through the cracks on a day like this more than they would a random Thursday.
Yep. And as you were pointing out, lots of ways to see what the money may be like in other pools. Double pools, you can check out Will Plays and some of the others and kind of get an idea how you think it may unfold. Anything else you want to hit on in this race?
No, I think we can move on to the second leg of this Rainbow Six sequence, which also does kick off the late pick 5 sequence, just in case you got knocked out in the first leg of the Rainbow Six. You can come right back in the late pick 5, which I'm sure is going to have a pretty large pool of its own.
They're hoping 1.75 million is the projection there with that 15% low takeout. And don't forget, they also have a coast-to-coast pick 5 that will include races 10, 12, and 13 at Gulfstream. So all 3 of those Pegasus races and then 2 from Santa Anita. And then they have the Sunset 6, which will be the last 3 races from Gulfstream and then the last 3 from Santa Anita. So if you didn't have enough wagers with just the wagers focused at Gulfstream, mix in a few with Santa Anita.
Yeah, there a lot of wagering options. You have to make some decisions about where your strongest opinions are. Choose the wagers that are really going to work for you, not just attacking everything, because it can get overwhelming on these days. You have to go in with a wagering plan. But this late sequence, I think, is one of the better sequences to focus on. So why don't we dive into this 9th race, the William L. McKnight, this one going the 1.5-mile distance on the turf course for the older horses. And I don't know, Gino, I thought that there were some pretty obvious horses in here that were going to take money, that did look pretty formidable on paper, one of which is the number 3 Ohana Honor. I'm seeing the morning line for the first time. I would imagine this horse is the morning line favorite. He is 5-2. Just a horse that has proven over time that he gets distances like this. Doesn't win all the time, but he's faced some pretty tough company along the way. And he did get a pretty good confidence booster last time at Aqueduct when he beat some overmatched competition. Now stepping back up in class, ridden by Flavien Prat, who drew very well. There's just a lot of arrows pointing to this horse.
There are a couple horses in here who just sort of fit the profile of their trainers. This is one who just looks like a shug horse that like gets a little bit better as they get a little bit older, a horse that he's been very patient with all along and just is solid at this level. The one, Zverev, looks exactly like a Mike Maker type horse where he claims a horse like this and then he's able to stretch them out. And all of a sudden he's winning graded stakes races going long with horses that were just claimers not long ago. It's funny, like, if you were going to write up a little description about them as trainers, that probably be something along those lines for the both of them. I think both those horses are pretty live. I agree with you. I think you start with Ohana Honor at 5-2. Probably won't get you all that excited to wager on. There are a couple horses in here, David, that I would throw into the mix maybe in late pick 5s, and I'm kind of curious in how they end up getting bet. All 3 of them are horses who I actually saw spend a little bit of time out on the West Coast at one point. The first is the 6, Miss the Cut. Did you like this horse a little bit?
Yeah, I think there are 2 horses that I can make pretty strong cases for in here. One of them is Ohana Honor, who we already covered. The other one is this horse, Miss the Cut. And if he's anywhere near that 6-1 morning line, he'd be a bet for me. I mean, I think he could be the 2nd or 3rd choice in this race because I do believe Ohana Honor is going to be favored. I'll be interested to see what the separation is between the 2 of them. But I think that would be a very fair price on this horse because I know it's been a little while since he's won a race. You got to go all the way back to early 2024, almost 2 years ago. But he's had his fair share of setbacks, stops and starts, and also some poor trips along the way. You can see some of the trip notes that I put in Formulator, and that's one of the most valuable tools in Formulator, the ability to enter those trip notes and remember some of the observations that you made when you watch these replays. But he's had some things not go so well, Gino. I mean, I think all the way back to that Mac Diarmida at Gulfstream last March, where a jockey on a speed horse just decided to rate out of the starting gate, and the horse got upset, and it messed up the trips for a lot of horses, and Miss the Cut just got shuffled all the way back to the back part of the pack, and that was not a race where you wanted them coming from so far back. I imagine that some injury occurred in the Louisville when we saw him last spring, because he was actually the horse that clipped heels with Rebel Red, who fell in the backstretch of that race, was ultimately okay, but he clipped the back of Miss the Cut's leg, and I would imagine that's what caused Miss the Cut to be off for so long after that. He had to go through the auction ring, was picked up for $80,000 by Michael Ivarone, who does like to have a lot of live shots on Pegasus World Cup Day every year, and I think he does this year. But last time, Gino, I just thought it was the perfect prep race, going a distance that's a little bit too short for him, but he was finishing best across the wire and now stretching back out to this distance. I think he's going to be pretty dangerous.
David, pull up the chart for that race too, if you can, because that was a pretty decent field, right? For an allowance race. The winner of that race, Abramar, is a stakes winner and a horse who's been at graded stakes company, and then who you just pulled up, Win for the Money, is a grade 1 winner there. So like that was a legitimate field. I'm not concerned at all with that third place finish. I think it should set him up beautifully for this. He was absolutely a horse that I wanted in the mix, because I did agree with one of the comments that we had earlier from Barry, from the Sniper. Shout out to my good friend Barry. I'm going to get to go hang out with him this weekend in Florida, heading on down there. We'll have a nice time, buddy. Barry does some work for us and helps us out with some daily racing form stuff. So Miss the Cut is very, very solid in here. The other two that I wanted to mention, David, are horses who I've always liked, and I think they are better than some of their recent form. But maybe
I already know where you're going, Gino.
They're tailing off. You know it. Balnikov and Devon Propose. Those are the two. And you knew as like a trip player, this is a horse that a lot of us have chased many times because he's tricky. He's quirky. He's got to be a difficult horse to ride and to train. But he does have some good races in there. Like he can run in spots. I wouldn't be shocked, because this is a field where there's no real monsters that scare me. He has faced some good company. Those are the two horses that were next on my radar. We're looking at the 11, then Balnikov, the other one I've just briefly mentioned.
Yeah, Devon Propos, I know that's a horse that you had chased for a while when he was in Southern California, Gino. And I mean, he had his fair share of less than ideal trips, rides that maybe weren't well judged. And he's better than his overall resume would indicate. You do wonder if at some point the window of opportunity has passed for these horses. But I mean, he didn't run badly against a pretty solid field last time in Fort Lauderdale, going a shorter distance. So he's interesting. With Balnikov, Gino, I mean, he is 7 years old now. Does the 1.5 mile distance worry you a little bit? Because I've always felt like he's better going a little shorter than that. And when he tried it last time in the Hollywood Turf Cup, that was not one of his better efforts.
Yeah, and he may just be beyond his better races. Mm-hmm. And what's always been a little tricky for him, he doesn't like the Santa Anita turf course. So Santa Anita runs most of the year out here in Southern California. You can see if you go back earlier in his career, he just doesn't really fire good races ever. So they've had to try to pick spots where he's not really running at Santa Anita. Sometimes they got to go a little longer or maybe a little shorter than he wants. But yeah, I agree. He was sort of on the fringes for me. One of those horses who I think he's better than that recent form. But as you're pointing out, once you start getting older and you string some of those races together that aren't quite as good. I mean, you're looking at 4 of his last 5 kind of non-threatening races with just one really good one. So maybe he doesn't have some of that late punch, but we'll see. If he floats up to a really big price and this kicks off a late pick 5, maybe he's the type of horse who I throw in there if he's too high up on the board.
Yeah, I will just mention, Gino, I don't think either one of us love this horse, but the number 1's Zverev is a horse that I think we should at least talk about a little bit, because I think a lot of people are going to gravitate towards this horse in the race, just given the fact that he's improved with distance for Mike Maker. I wouldn't be surprised if he's like the clear-cut second choice in this race after Ohana Honor. I'm a little skeptical of his recent improvement, just because, I mean, you could see it on Time Form US. He's been so with the flow in his last couple of races. And while I do respect that he's got the versatility to go to the lead or come from way off the pace, I mean, he got a slow pace when he was towards the front end 2 back, and then he got a fast pace when he was coming from way back in a race that just completely fell apart at the end last time. So I wonder if he's quite as good as those recent victories would indicate. And at the price I expect him to be, I was trying to beat him in this spot, but I understand people making a case for him being the now horse.
Yeah, he's fine, right? Both the 1 and the 3, I think, are fine. As we talk this race out, I feel like the 6 might be the interesting horse to play from a value-based standpoint. If he is in that like 5 to 1-ish range, I think that's probably fair.
I think we can move on to the next leg, which stays on the turf. And this is the first of the Pegasus branded races that we'll talk about. This one, the Grade 2 Pegasus World Cup Filly and Mare Turf Invitational. That is quite a mouthful. Going the 1.16 distance for the fillies and mares. And Gino, this has to be the most wide open race on the entire card. I mean, you can see it from the morning line. I wouldn't want to be probably making a morning line for this race. I mean, I understand going for a 9-2 favorite in here, and I have no idea who's going to be the favorite. It's a tough race to wrap your head around. And I think Trips are going to be really important, and just having an opinion is going to be important in this race because there's a temptation to go really deep when you're trying to put together a multi-race sequence through this leg.
You can poke holes in everyone and make a case for just about everyone. I think the morning line favorite is 9-2, and I believe the longest shot in the field is 20-1 on the morning line. And I think the 7 Whiskey Decision is a horse who you actually hit on one time last year when we were doing a preview. Improved, took the step forward last year when moving into the Chad Brown barn. And I think it's just sort of solid in this race and kind of looks like a newish face with upside. And so maybe a horse that, based on connections, the bettors will gravitate towards, but by no means a horse that's like a cinch or a standout over the rest of the field. And then you go to the next contender in our time, who was third in this race last year and may have a speed advantage or a major pace edge on a lot of these. But the horse has just won for the last 9, and we can see with the 6 runner-up efforts is a horse that doesn't mind settling for some minor awards if need be. So right off the bat, you take the 2 horses who will take some money in here, and neither one of them seem like they're overwhelming standouts. They absolutely could win, but I thought this was a really, really deep, challenging race. Not deep because they're all grade 1 winners, but deep because it's just competitive. They don't seem like they're all separated by a heck of a lot.
It is so competitive. And I mean, if you can find a 15 to 20 to 1 shot that you really like, this is the kind of race to take a shot because there's not that much of a difference between the horses that are going to be double-digit prices and those that are going to be shorter prices. I personally had trouble making cases for the biggest prices in this race, but I do think it's still a fascinating one to handicap. Personally, for me, Gino, I don't have much interest at all in Whiskey Decision this day. That race that I liked, your 3 back at Monmouth, that was a much weaker field than this one, and the one horse that was of similar talent to her, Ozara, had the tougher trip than Whiskey Decision did. And since then, I don't love her form. She beat a weaker field in the Athenia last time. Maybe she takes money by default here, but she's not for me. I do have much more respect for the second horse that you mentioned, In Our Time, who I do think a mile and the 16th is just a little far for her, and I question the distance, just as I did last year in the Pegasus World Cup Filly Mare Turf when, I mean, she led for a long way, setting an honest pace and got caught at the end by Be Your Best and Sacred Wish, who are 2 nice horses. But, I mean, she got things the way that she wanted, and she still got reeled in at the end. She's been in great form. She's so versatile. She can do it all. She's got the gate speed. She probably is going to clear from the outside post. I just wonder if she's going to be able to take them all the way up front, and she probably is going to be one of the shorter prices in this race. So she's in the mix for me, but there are a couple of others that I preferred more.
So me and Ashley Mayu previewed this race on the Daily Racing Form YouTube. So let's start with your opinion in here, David. Who are some of the horses that are on your radar for this one?
Well, one horse who I think is going to become a popular pick in this race is the number 8 Proctor Street. Sure. She's 12-1 on the line. Like I said, I wouldn't want to make a line for these races. They're so tough, and it's just inevitable that some horses are going to slip through the cracks when you have to make a price on every single horse and across all these stakes races. You're not going to be right 100 times. I'm not going to be surprised when Proctor Street is vying for favoritism in this race because, I mean, Gino, her merits are just fairly obvious on paper. I mean, she's won 3 of the last 4. She's coming off a stakes win. Anybody who watches that replay is going to be impressed. I mean, the way she traveled into the race, she was just so full of run. Tyler Gaffleon rode her with so much confidence to the 8th pole as she just kind of split horses under her own power and ran away from those. And this is a grade 2 race. And it definitely is nothing more than that. I mean, there are no grade 1 horses in here is what I'm saying. Yeah. So it's a step up in class, but it's not a huge step up in class. It's not a bigger step up in class than what Whiskey Decision is taking. She's probably coming out of a tougher race. So I think she's super logical in here. I don't expect to get much more than 4-1 on her, if that. But I do view her as one of the more likely winners of the race. So she's one of them, Gino. And the other one would be the number 5 Classic Q, who I do think could be closer to that 6-1. Again, I don't have full confidence about how they're going to bet this race. She is a newly turned 4-year-old. So I do think that she might have further improvement in her, even though she's done a lot of racing. And she's just been a tricky horse to ride for her entire career because she kind of wants to run off when you use her tactical speed and you send her out of the gate. And you could see in a few of her running lines, I mean, she just is hard to restrain, and she'll open up a multi-length lead on her fields, which tends to take away from her finishing ability. But when they take her back out of the gate, she can be tough to handle, and the jockeys end up having to take her further back than they really want to as they try to get her to settle. That's what happened too back in the Valley View, where she just wound up way towards the back of the pack, was fighting Jose Ortiz's restraint, and then still was able to produce a finish. One day, I'm hoping they're able to find the happy medium where she can kind of settle in the pocket, stalking, and produce a run. And if they're ever able to do that, I think she's going to be really dangerous. Maybe this is the race. I think that she ran better than it looks in several of her races over the Gulfstream Park turf course last year. I do think she's this kind of horse from a quality standpoint. So if I had to make a top pick in this race, she'd be the one. And I think that there could be a fair value on her at the price. So I'm kind of 5'8" in here, Gino. How are you looking at it?
Was she the horse that you got a tip from the trainer for thanking you for putting her on the lead in the DRF race preview?
She is the horse.
I thought so.
The post race quotes. Mark Cassidy actually thanked us for the tip. Telling him to go to the lead with her. I think that was the wild applause at Saratoga. But yeah, she's versatile. She can go to the front. She can rate. I'm just hoping that she's able to settle in this race, and at least Jose Ortiz knows her well.
Because on paper, I completely agree with you. I picked her second in this spot too. I think she could sit. Wouldn't it be great if she could sit right behind In Our Time? If In Our Time goes from the outside and she can stalk about a length off and just have every opportunity to try to move early and get the jump on some of the deeper closers in here. Because of that trip possibility, I have to include her in my multi-race exotics. A horse who I've always liked, and she's a tough read in this particular race, but I want to talk about her a little bit, is Destino d'Oro, the 3, because she was awesome in her first 2 starts. And she's one of those horses who I remember the first time out when she won as like, okay, I'm going to play her next time out. And then she had a brutal trip in the Jessamine. And I was waiting for her to come back all 2025. Like, where's she going to show up? When's she going to show up? And she does. She wins nicely first time out. And then she goes into the pucker up. It was interesting. She showed a lot more positional speed that day. She had generally just been a really deep closer. And then I was getting excited, like, man, she's improving. She's getting more mature. You can kind of put her more in the race. Then she went in the Dueling Ground Oaks. I do think that race, she got hammered at the windows, first of all. And so I remember thinking she just should not have been that short of a price in that field at all. But she did not have a great trip. It doesn't talk a whole lot about it. She was down on the inside. She never really got a chance to run. She wasn't going to win the race or anything, but she was inside in traffic, didn't really get much of an opportunity. And I was a little surprised that right after putting her closer to the race was successful, that she was way, way back out of it again. Didn't really fire at all in the QE2. And then I'm wondering, is it just the class level maybe? Maybe when she steps up and faces tougher horses, they're just a little bit better than her. I thought this was a nice, get back into the winner's circle, confidence building victory on December the 13th. She moved after Ann one more time. She was able to run that one down. I think that race could set her up for one more step forward. And in this race where nobody scares me, if she took one more step and was able to progress on her speed figures just into the low 90s, middle 90s, would that be the biggest shock in the world? And would that race put her in the mix with these? She's one that I've kind of always liked. I think that she might have bounced back off that. I wonder if some people might have kind of jumped off of her bandwagon after some of those disappointing efforts when she faced tougher company. So I am curious, David, if she is in the, double-digit range, 8 and above, I think she's a horse that probably fits her price. She'll be one in the mix for me. You mentioned the 5, who was my other one. What do you think about Destino d'Oro?
Yeah, I think she's a viable option in this race. I mean, again, everything's price dependent in here. She has been a horse that's been popular with the bettors, but maybe you're right. Maybe this is the time that they go off her. She was facing slightly weaker than this in the Tropical Park Oaks last time, but then we watched that replay. I mean, she got herded out in the late stages because then One More Time was really drifting once Javier switched over to the left-handed stick, and Destino d'Oro still went by her despite getting herded out in the final 16th of a mile. So, I mean, maybe that was the confidence builder that she needed after those couple of disappointing efforts. She's supposed to get a good trip from the inside. So I think she is a horse that you can definitely consider in here.
That race came back a little live already. That 4th place finisher, Super Zonda, won the Sunshine Philly and Ameriturf last out, I think earned an 87 buyer. So that race was a little bit stronger on paper than we might have thought if that was the case. And if this horse just has a little bit more than she looks on paper, I think she fits pretty well in here. Go ahead. Where else were you headed?
Yeah, I mean, a horse that I struggled with in here is the number 6, Caitlin Her Greatness, because I mean, she's got plenty of strong performances in her running lines. Most of the victories at least have come on synthetic. She's tried turf a number of times, and at first glance, you might look at the career box and say, well, she's not as good on the turf as she is on synthetic. But you start to look at the turf races in isolation, Gino, and they're really not that bad. I mean,
no,
she Feels Pretty a couple of times. She wasn't going to beat that foe, and when she ran the Dance Smartly 3 back, I mean, she was beaten by today's rival Breathaway, but Breathaway could not have gotten a better trip in there, where she saved all the ground. And Caitlin Her Greatness kind of went on this wide march to the lead and maybe moved a little bit too soon in that race. So I think she's about as equally talented on synth as she is on the turf. It's just a matter of whether or not her best form is going to stack up against this field. But again, it's going to depend on price, whether or not you think she's worth taking a shot with.
Yeah, certainly classy. Certainly a horse who can sit a really nice trip too. Kind of trip that we're kind of talking about in this race. Yep. Maybe just a few lengths off the lead, not having to worry about a lot of the traffic that the horses behind her may have. So, yeah, it seems like we're both a little cold on, Whiskey Decision, who may or may not take some money. You mentioned Breathaway. It's funny. She reminds me a little bit of a horse that you mentioned earlier when we were talking about this race. Like, I never thought she was that classy, graded stakes type of a horse. But as she's continued and just like held her solid form, it's like she gets a little bit better because she just stays at that level while other horses kind of fall off. She reminds me a little bit of Ozara, who we saw do sort of similar. Like, I wasn't sure how good she was, but she kept running at the level, like improving a little. And all of a sudden she's in graded stakes races and a competitor in there. So I didn't know what to do with her. She was one of the tougher reads in this race for me.
Yeah, I like some of her races. I mean, she put in a big late kick when she beat Caitlin Her Greatness in that Dance Smartly I was talking about. And I mean, she ran well behind a horse in Special Juan 2 back, would probably be a clear-cut favorite if she were in here. So the Goldakova makes her a contender. And then last time in the Matriarch, again, she was facing a tougher field. She couldn't quite get to In Our Time, who ran really well in that spot. And I think that effort arguably makes In Our Time the horse to beat in this race. But Breathaway was closing into a pace that mostly held together. So it wasn't another good effort. The reason that I didn't ultimately go to her in here, Gino, is that it's a large field and she just seems to have lost the positional speed that she once had. She's just kind of dropping out the back door in her races recently. And if she is 10th, 11th, 12th in the early stages here, that's a tough trip to pull off successfully in a large field at Gulfstream Park where the stretch is shorter. So I'm a little concerned about her coming from too far back in this race, but I mean, her recent form puts her right in the mix.
One more horse to ask you about before you flip the page. Any using Heredia, the 2, who comes out of that Matriarch, was not far behind Breathaway last time out. They were both behind In Our Time. She's sneaky. She's got a little form, but I don't know how good she is overall.
Yeah, she's a horse I chased a little bit this summer, and you can make some minor excuses. She was wide in the First Lady, got shuffled back early, but I mean, I know she lost that race by a length and a half. When I watched that replay, she never looked like she was getting there. And the Matriarch last time, she just got outclosed by Breathaway, and they got similar trips. So the last race kind of left a sour taste in my mouth. So she is a horse that I'm going off in this race, but I had tried to make her in the past, so maybe she'll be a better price this time, and now's the time to get on her. I just couldn't quite make her good enough to win this race.
This would be the start of the late pick 4. They are hoping for about 1.25 million in that late pick 4 pool. So just huge pools projected all throughout the card on Saturday at Gulfstream Park. Shall we turn the page to the inside information?
Let's do it.
So race number 11 is going to be the grade 2 inside information, $225,000 up for grabs, 7 furlongs, the distance on the main track there. An aforementioned horse earlier on was Jody's Pride. I think from a kind of a starting point, some of the horses to discuss in here, you think, is she the horse to start with? Like the most accomplished, or one of the horses that we feel solid about taking money and kind of running their race?
Yeah, I mean, I guess if you look at the ceiling that every horse has in this race, you could argue that she has the highest ceiling when you go back to performances like the Ruthian last year when she earned that 97 buyer, beating one of today's rivals, Sterling Silver. The problem with Jody's Pride, really for her entire career has just been consistency, because she's up, she's down. It's hard to predict when she's going to run well. They've gone back and forth to turf and then back to dirt. And I mean, she handles both surfaces. She handles a variety of distances. you just have to catch her at the right time. And I wonder if this is the right time, because she's coming off a little bit of a layoff. She's kind of getting another campaign started. And she is a horse that I find when I've been handicapping her over her entire career, she generally gives a tell to how she's going to run in her workouts. And there are times when she's worked great and I've had a lot of confidence in her, and other times where she hasn't worked so great and she hasn't run so well. And her workouts for this, you can watch a couple of them on First TV. They've been a mixed bag. I mean, to me, she's been slightly second best to that horse that I mentioned earlier, Nelson Avenue in the morning. And I don't have as much familiarity with what kind of workhorse Nelson Avenue is, so I don't want to just solely rely on that comparison. But she just doesn't look quite as sharp as I want her to be coming into this race. And at the price that she's likely to be with Flavien Prat getting aboard, I thought that she was a horse you could take a shot against.
And I did this earlier in our Daily Racing Form video preview, but I'm angling for a raise, So, hey, Jody, editor-in-chief from DRF. We love you, Jody. Hope everything's going well on your end. Jody's pride there. So shout out to Jody, the editor-in-chief over there, who we love.
We love Jody.
enough butt kissing for me. Let's move on over. So David, if we're a little cold on Jody's pride, who do you gravitate towards? Or first off, who do you think the horse to beat in this race is? That's where I kind of had a tricky kind of part. Who is like a top tier contender for you?
That's a good question. I would say the horse to beat is Sterling Silver, just because
I think so too.
She's so consistent. I mean, I know she had a brief lull this summer where they tried turf and maybe she didn't run up to expectations in an oddly run Johnstone. But I mean, generally, Gino, you know what you're going to get from her. She gives a good account of herself. She's not a grade 1 quality horse, but I mean, this race didn't come up that strong for a grade 2. And it just feels like this is an attainable spot for her. The Rampart, she's beating a lot of the same horses that she met last time. I think there are 5 runners in this race coming out of the Rampart. And to me, not only did she win the race decisively, but she ran by far the best race because, she had to cover ground. She was outside every step of the way, going wide, making that run. It's not like there was a ton of pace for her to close into, and she still was able to run by them all. You can see she is the widest horse here. She's going to be in those white and black silks, looping the field, the gray. And that was going a mile, Gino. And to me, a mile is as far as Sterling Silver wants to go. I think she's at her best going 7 furlongs. She cuts back this distance. There should be a fair pace in this race. I don't know why they switched trainers. I don't know why you would switch a horse away from Bill Mott, who generally gets the best out of horses. But, she ran a good race for this barn last time, so I don't really care about that. I don't know if she's going to be the favorite or not, but to me, she is kind of the starting point and the horse to beat in this race.
So I think you have to use her in your late exotics too. To me, she's like the measuring stick. If nobody jumps up and runs this race that's really good or more improved on paper than we've seen, she's probably the most likely winner of this race. A horse who I want to use, David, because can you pull up the Timeform US pace projector? I'm kind of curious how fast they'll be going early in here. I'm going to include the 11 just in case this horse can catch a flyer, because Grand Job is very fast and has the ability to run some pretty big races. The funny thing is she always gets bet, and this actually may be an interesting a spot where she may not be getting bet quite as much. And I completely agree with the comment right here. She ran like she needed the last. She was flying in that race. And she can get a mile. We've seen her get the distance. 7 furlongs shouldn't be an issue if she doesn't have to go quite that fast. And I don't think she's going to have to go as fast early on as she was being pushed in that last start.
Yeah, to me, Gino, she is the perfect example of the kind of horse where Timeform US is so good at telling the story of a horse's career, because you look at the color codings in her past performances, and she's got 3 wins since switching to dirt in the US, and they were all the races where you see either black or blue color-coded paces when she got to set paces that were comfortable for her. But the 2 times that she was pushed to run some extremely fast early pace ratings, and you could see all these pace figures color-coded in red for the Royal Delta and the allowance race last time, that was just those were just paces that were too fast. They were uncomfortable for her. And she actually ran this amazing race in the Royal Delta going back to last February, where a mile and a 16th is probably too far for her. And she was pushed through some unreasonably fast fractions and still held on for second. She was the best horse that day, even though she got beat by one of today's rivals. And off the layoff last time, Gino, there was another horse in that Churchill race. I believe her name is Anna Karina, who is like this quarter horse that's based the Churchill Downs and runs in thoroughbred races. And I mean, she just, rockets out of the gate, and she hooked up with Grand Job early, and they both paid the price and faded. That's the kind of race that Grand Job is supposed to move forward from. So I think that she's very dangerous in this race. I don't know what price she's going to be, because it seems like they can't get enough betting her every time that she steps on the racetrack. But I do think she's very dangerous in this spot.
Yep. We both agree that Grand Job is a player. Who else should we get to? There was the 4 Her Laugh was a horse who I took a couple looks at, David, because she had some good races earlier on in the career to start for before changing barns. Then came over into the Riley Mott barn, and that November 14th race at Churchill Downs was not bad. Was shifting inside. The winner circled the field that day. It seemed like a good starting point coming back off the bench. And now, then in the second start in the La Brea, the race was a little bit weird. It was disappointing. I'm not going to say she ran well. It was kind of a weird race where, Usha just absolutely crushed, and then everybody else was battling for minor awards in here. Can this filly take a step forward, third start off the bench, or is she even in contention, with some of the top horses in here?
I don't know. She's a tough read for me, because you have to assume that there's further upside with her, because I don't think she's run well enough to be competitive with a field like this just yet. And she was a horse that I didn't like going back to the Kentucky Oaks Trail last year, because I thought that, she got a very favorable trip when she won that Untappable. And I know things went wrong after that for her, and maybe she didn't want to go farther. But her 2 races since returning, well, I do like her sprinting. They're just a little bit inscrutable for me from a quality standpoint, because I'm not sure how strong the La Brea really was. Yeah. And she took some kickback and she was trying to make her run. I still wanted to see her do more running in the stretch of that race. So if she's a big price in here, I'm not going to talk anybody off of her, but she was not one of the horses that I was looking to use in here. Of the newly turned 4-year-olds that are stepping up, the one that I like the most is the number 1, Indy Bay. We'll see. I don't know if 9-2 is a great price on her. We'll see if she goes up or down from there. But she just ran some speed figures that put her squarely in the mix last year. I know the Charlestown Oaks was around 2 turns and she got a good trip, but she ran well that day. And Vodka with a Twist to his second came back to validate that form by just barely losing in the Raven Run a couple starts later. So I think that was a legitimate race. And obviously something went wrong in the Cotillion last time. She just kind of lost her action and pulled up on the turn. Needed time since then. But Gino, I know you watch a lot of the workouts. I'm sure you pulled up the tape of her recent workouts on First TV. She just seems like a horse that's thriving in the morning, and I would imagine she's going to run well in this spot.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I put the same thing. It was with Devon Propos, right, who we had mentioned earlier, and was just, we know that that's a classy horse. And she was able to just look really, really impressive in that January 16th work. She could sit a nice trip too if she doesn't get shuffled, like in that tier just behind the leaders. She fits really well. What do we do with the 6 who comes off of that big speed figure last time out, but it kind of looks like a bit of an outlier? I tried to look up. No horses from that race have come back to run yet. Nope. So we can't get a good sense of how strong it was.
No, nobody's come back to run, but you can kind of see when you pull this up, there was a heavy favorite that was a no-show in that race. So maybe it got a little weaker than it initially looked. And you just look up the PPs of, the runner-up and the third place finisher. They're horses that have rarely run above 80 buyers, just not the strongest allowance race. So I'm not sure what she was beating. She was so impressive visually. I kind of want to see her do it again against a field like this. So she wasn't for me. The only other horse I really even considered in here, Gino, was the number 10, One Magic Filly, who has been trying to get a mile in her recent races. I think that she's way better going 7 furlongs. So I think that she could improve a little bit just on the cutback. And while she didn't run as well as Sterling Silver last time, she is a horse that has shown ability in the past for different barns. Brendan Walsh does a great job, and I think could still get better out of her since coming into his barn. So she's the other horse that I would use in this race. And for me, it was kind of all about trying to beat Jody's Pride and using Indy Bay, One Magic Filly, Sterling Silver, and Grand Job. They're kind of the 4, and I'll sort them based on what prices I think they're going to be when I take a deeper look at this race. Indy Bay is kind of the one that I feel the most confidence is going to show up on the day, just given the vibes I'm getting from her. But I do worry that she could be one of the shorter prices.
Shout out to Verity, who is getting a little bit of a look here, and another one for Verity as we get ready to turn the page here. Any final thoughts on this one before we move into the big Pegasus races?
No, I think we're ready to move on to the late double, both the grade 1s on this card.
Yeah, and remember, you can also play these as part of the Coast to Coast Pick 5 and the Sunset 6. Those wagers will be specifically mentioned at those titles when you're playing them in your ADWs. And we move to the Pegasus World Cup Turf. What I thought was kind of cool about this race, David, is that between Cabo Spirit, Call Sign 7, Almendares, Astronomer, you basically have a Southern California field. There's a lot of times where that's a whole field in some of the SoCal races out here, and they all come out for the Pegasus World Cup. So you get a couple of the horses who are in better form from Southern California out here. But I mean, just at first glance, it does not look like there's that much early pace in this race.
No, there's really not. I mean, I'll go right to the Timeform US pace projector and you can kind of see it. I mean, there's no characterization for this pace, which you would typically expect to see a fast pace designation, just given the fact that there are 12 horses entered in this race and large fields tend to produce faster paces. But I mean, you look at who is shown forward in this race, like you said, Cabo Spirit, the number 8, he's a confirmed speed. But then you look at those that are shown behind him, One Stripe. I mean, I don't think he's a horse that they're looking to get forward, given the way that he stopped the one time that they did try to show speed with him. The number 11 Astronomer, the number 3 Beach Gold, they're not exactly speed horses. So it does feel like Cabo Spirit could be totally loose in here, Gino. And you mentioned the Southern California flavor for this race. There have been some pretty good turf horses based out west over the past year or so. Horses like Johannes and Formidable Man. And those are really the only horses that have been beating Cabo Spirit in his recent races. So I think his form stacks up pretty well. And I mean, depends on what price he is, but he is a horse that I take very seriously as a threat to wire this field.
I completely agree. And he is a horse who has had a couple different sort of runs in his career. Like he was good early, then he would tail off form a little bit. He is in career best form right now. In his last 8 starts, 7 of them were top 3 finishes. There was one where he was just battling early on. He went way too quick in the Seabiscuit, put a line through that. Everything else, he's been right there. Really, really honest. He's fought all the way on till the end. He doesn't get beat a whole heck of a lot. I think he's a horse who you have to respect in this race because the way it shapes up. I'm absolutely going to be using him in multiple exotics and some of the late races, and I think he could really dictate this race.
Yeah, I just want to show the beginning part of this race last time, Gino, because there was a sprinter in this race, a horse named Nessos Lastarado. I know that you've liked it different times, but I mean, he's a speed horse, and he tried to go forward, and it forced Cabo Spirit to, I think, be used more than they really would have ideally wanted to even clear off and make the lead in this race. And you just see the way that he spread out this field in the early stages of the race last time in late December. And the fact that he was able to kick on again once everybody came to him at the top of the stretch and still hold them all off, I mean, I think it just speaks to the fact that he is a horse in really good form right now. So I agree. I think he's dangerous. And one thing you know about Mike Smith being aboard, he is not afraid to send a speed horse. So I think this one is going to be on the early lead. But, I think we should mention the morning line favorite in this race because he is the one that the race kind of goes through. The number 2 Program Trading. I mean, he is a multiple grade 1 winner from years past. I know he spent a while on the sidelines, but he actually came back in pretty good form last summer into fall. And while this is a grade 1 race and it has, the World Cup moniker, I mean, there aren't that many proven grade Group 1 level horses in here. And he is getting some significant class relief dropping out of the Breeders' Cup Mile last time, where we should note, and I'll pull up the stretch replay. I'll try to get to the exact right spot, but I mean, he did really lose all chance in the stretch last time.
He was sitting about 5 or 6 lengths off, and he had absolutely nowhere to go. Traffic, just a 0 chance trip. And then they wrapped up on him late. Right after he had nowhere to go, then they don't really persevere with him all that late. He ends up finishing 10th. And the thing about this, David, why I love him in this spot as a short, I don't love him, right? He's 5-2, but why I think he's formidable and he's going to be pretty tough in here. The Breeders' Cup, he's in a tough position because this horse is a true 1.125 horse.
Yes.
And a mile is a little short for him. 1.5 miles is too far for him. This is the trip that he wants, 1.125 miles. And when I look down this field, you hit on it. I don't know if any of these horses are really legitimate grade 1 horses. He is. He absolutely is. To me, on class, he is like head and shoulders above the rest of this field. I think he absolutely stands out. And I think the trip is something that he loves. And as you just showed, he's also coming off of a troubled trip against the tip-top horses in the Breeders' Cup Mile, where he was only 10-1.
Yeah, I mean, he fit in that race, and frankly, he was following Notable Speech into the stretch. I know the replay, you have to watch it a couple times with those large fields to kind of find the right horse, but I mean, he was following Notable Speech, and Flavien Prat made what is a very rare tactical error for him by not, following the jockey on Williams' speech up, Notable Speech up the inside. He tried to go outside and actually ran right into the back of another horse that he'll meet in the starting gate here, One Stripe, who was stopping at that point, and he just lost all momentum. But yeah, I mean, I remember. I think it must have been Dave Grenning writing the article at Saratoga about this horse's comeback in the summer before the Bernard Baruch. And I remember Chad Brown saying in the pre-race quotes that I don't really want to run this horse a mile, but I kind of have to prepare him like I'm targeting the Breeders' Cup Mile because there are no 1.25 mile, 1/8 races at the end of the year to run him. So they're just kind of waiting for the right spot. I think they're finally finding the right spot here. And I've watched some of his recent workouts. I know it maybe matters less for the turf horses, but I do really like the way he's working coming in here. He drew well. He's going to be awfully tough to beat. I don't know what, I mean, it depends on how short of a price he is. If he's even money, that's probably not a great price in this large field. But if he's 8-5, 2-1, that probably isn't the worst price on him, just given the advantage that I think he has in this race.
And when you're thinking about multi-exotics too, you can't play 4 and 5 horses in every race. If there are races where you want to go shorter and you take a stand or you single or you want to go too deep, this would be that type of race for me, David, where I could maybe shorten up to him and maybe Cabo Spirit as a horse who could be on the lead. And I'd be fine with the two of them. I would be fine using him as a horse to build around. I just think it's a great spot for him. And I prefer him at his short price than some of the other horses at short prices in the races around them. So if you're just looking at it from that standpoint, which of these favorites do I think are the strongest and is the most likely winner of their race? I would say it's this one for me.
Yeah, and I've been mentioning along the way, Gino, I mean, you're thinking about ticket construction, and you do want to start thinking about that as you handicap. There are maybe 3-4 horses, or maybe I don't like one horse that I'm leaving out, but I want to use like 3 others to get some coverage in prior races. This is a race where I think some people might be tempted to spread against this favorite. This is a favorite that I want to have a lot of my play go through to give me the leeway to spread with some bigger prices I like in a few of the other races around it. So I am not going to go very deep here, and I agree. The 2 horses that I really want are Program Trading and Cabo Spirit. There's one more horse I'm going to give a shout out to, Gino. It's the number 1 test score, because I know he's light on speed figures, but he really did have some trouble in the stretch of the Hollywood Derby last time. There's an argument he was going to win that race if Juan Hernandez was able to find a clear path for him. And he is the kind of horse that just shows up every time. He can make his own good trip. He's supposed to get a very good trip from the rail. Manny Franco knows him really well, so I don't mind him getting back aboard here. He's going to have to improve a little bit, but as a newly turned 4-year-old in a race that's full of 6, 7, 8-year-olds, I mean, he is the one with upside.
David, these next 2 are kind of comments and questions that go together. This one, and then a point saying that the 2 Program Trading who we're talking about has never run at Gulfstream Park. So how much do you weigh things like, horses' success at a particular track, particular distance, things like that, as the question came up here?
I mean, with an older horse like this, that's raced at a lot of different courses, different course configurations, it doesn't bother me as much.
Yep.
And with a horse like Program Trading in particular, that has shown that he can sit closer to the pace maybe than he was last time in the Breeders' Cup Mile, it worries me less, because obviously the profile of the Gulfstream Park turf course is that you probably don't want to be coming from 15 lengths behind unless the pace is really hot. And we don't think the pace is going to be really hot in this race. And I trust in Flavien Prat to have this horse in the position that he needs to be over the Gulfstream Park turf course. So I don't worry about it that much for him. And I think you said there was another question, Gino.
Yeah, and it was saying the 2 never ran at Gulfstream. And I kind of look at it the other way. I worry more about horses that are maybe horses for courses when they go elsewhere. If we've seen a horse have particular success at one track and then they go to a different track, I'm curious if they can carry their track with them. So that, especially if it's a short priced horse, that's when I would be a little more trepidatious and kind of take a wait and see approach if they really do excel on that particular track. And I love what you were kind of hitting on too. What is that particular surface known for, right? Is it a type of turf course where you don't want to be too far out of it? And this is a stone cold closer who doesn't have a lot of versatility. Then maybe that's where you think about that, right? Or a race at Santa Anita where maybe you're drawn on the inside down the hill, where that isn't always the best position to be. Maybe post positions on certain courses, or maybe the way that those particular courses play out. is something that I would look at. So I thought that was interesting because those two kind of both asked similar questions about horses for courses. Anything else in here you want to hit on?
Yeah, before we move on from this race, Gino, I've seen a lot of people liking the horse that has your name hidden in there.
Gino, baby. Cugino.
I mean, he's the second choice on the line, and I get it. I mean, he's coming off a second place finish in the Fort Lauderdale last time, the local prep for this. I thought he got such a perfect trip in that Fort Lauderdale. And I know he was beaten by a good horse in Wolfie's Dynagos, so I'm sad is not in this race. But I kind of feel like we saw his ceiling last time. And I don't know if he's naturally as talented as a horse like Program Trading. I just wanted to get your take on him because he's a horse that I think people are going to either be for or against in this spot.
I completely agree. I've always liked him. I've used him in some spots. I don't think he's quite this good yet. At least, like, I don't know if he's a grade 1 winner and can win a race like this in a big field against others. I agree with you. He got the trip that he wanted. Wolfie's Dynagos was better that day. I think he set like a world record, if I'm not mistaken. Wolfie's Dynagos were like something absurd because I needed Cugino that day. So that's what happens. You get beat by the world record setters when you're struggling. But I think he's going to be shorter than what I would want for him. Like, if he is anywhere comparable to Program Trading, like if he takes money and Program Trading is, like you said, 2-1 or 8-5, and this horse is like 5-2 or something close, I am way more in the side of Program Trading if they're anywhere close to each other.
Same. I think we have the same take on Cugino. I also worry, Gino, he got that rail skimming trip last time, and that just seems unavailable to him here, breaking from post 10, especially with a jockey on board who has had a ton of success and has a great year, but not always a jockey that's looking to get to the rail. So I just worry that it's not going to be the same trip for Cugino this time.
That was his race on paper because it was not a strong field. It was like him and Wolfie's Dynagos. Those were the two horses in that race. Did you think Wolfie's Dynagos was going to get the lead, or was he going to sit? He didn't have traffic to deal with. He didn't have to worry about anything else like he's had in some of his other races, and he just couldn't get by. A solid horse, but I don't know if Wolfie's Dynagos is better than a horse like Program Trading or anything like that, right? If he's going to be able to kick and hold off a horse like that one. So, different circumstances when you're trying to hold off a closer versus run down a horse like Wolfie, who was mentioning, he's run some horses off their feet time and time again, but we're both a little, we both like Program Trading much more than Cugino here.
Yep. And I think we covered that one. So why don't we close things out with this Pegasus World Cup? And I think we got a comment earlier, or I think it was a question actually, just saying, is this as simple as just picking the grade 1 winners? Well, in this race, Gino, we've got several grade 1 winners to choose from. Actually, a couple of former Breeders' Cup winners in Full Serrano and White Abario. There are plenty of horses in this race that have had their glory days in the past. I think one of the big questions to answer in handicapping this Pegasus World Cup is, who is the horse that's ready to win a grade 1 right now?
Yeah, and we can start talking with the one Disco Time, who is undefeated, who's 5 for 5, who has been brilliant, in particular in his last 2 starts since returning from the Lecomte. If you look at his speed figures, 100+ buyers in both of them. I have 0 knocks on what he's done on the track, everything. Funny, if you know a handicapper, it starts like they're setting you up to poke holes in a horse, and that's exactly what I'm doing, right? It's like, I have no problem with what he's done. My main question is with him, who is the best horse that he's beat in his career?
It's probably Tip Top Thomas. And that horse would have no chance in this race.
That would be my only...
Didn't even run his best race when he faced him last time. So that's a concern, Gino. But I mean,
there might be 6 or 7 horses in here that are better than any horse he's ever faced, right?
Yep.
That doesn't mean he can't be way better than all of them. But I always take that into account when a horse is going to be a very short price in a field like this. And he may look to his outside and have to deal with, oh, wow, there's Full Serrano. That's a Breeders' Cup winner. Oh, wow, Banishing. That horse is really solid, and he's been up and down the road against some of the better horses. I mean, Skippy Longstocking, I don't love him in this spot, but when you talk about what he does really well, run at Gulfstream and go a mile and an eighth, this is kind of mapped out for him, even though he hasn't run well in this race previously. Twice, I think he didn't run well that well. He was 3rd last year behind White Abario. He kind of ran okay. I mean, Tapan Street, obviously, the only horse to beat Sovereignty in the year, White Abario. So I do think this field is just going to be a little tougher for him. The thing with him, though, is he's not a need the lead horse Disco Time. Like, he can come from off the pace. He's not like a speed burner, one-dimensional, where if he gets caught up, that's going to ruin his chances. But this is going to be better than anything he's faced, and he's never been a mile and an eighth. So 2 things to at least mention about the horse who's the morning line favorite.
Yeah, and I think they have to be legitimate concerns for a horse that is going to be a short price, trying a new class level for the first time. My inclination, Gino, is to side on the divide of this horse actually being really good.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, I wasn't so much taken with his early races when he was on the Derby trail before going to the sidelines, though I did find it curious that he was able to just so naturally adapt his running style to come from as far back as he did in the Lecomte. Even though I didn't like the Lecomte as a race, it was just interesting that a horse was able to make that move to change up his running style from one race to the next. But I mean, the St. Louis Derby and the Dwyer, I mean, I was at Aqueduct that day. I got to watch it in person. He was powerful in the stretch, and he's not like your typical classic distance horse when you see him, because you might have seen it in that replay I pulled up. He's got this like really quick action to him. He almost like moves his legs like a sprinter, but I mean, he's able to sort of make those multiple moves in a race, like we saw in the Lecomte, where he was able to unleash that kick once Florent Geroux wanted it out of him. So I do think this horse has more gears than maybe he had to use in a race like the Dwyer last time. But again, with those huge speed figures showing, the expectation that he's this good is going to be built into the price. So I don't want to just go all in on him. I think there's better value to be found elsewhere. And I do prefer his stablemate from a price standpoint, Gino, the number 7, to Pan Street, who probably is not going to be 6-1. I think he'll be the second choice in this race, but I do think
7-2.
He's going to be. Yeah, I think it's going to be 7-2. I think that would probably be, the expected price, just given the way I think that this board's going to line up. He has not had that triple-digit buyer on his resume like Disco Time has, but everybody knows that he beat Sovereignty in the Florida Derby. That's going to attract some support his way, just given the reputation of the presumptive 3-year-old champion and horse.
David, you know that meme of Wolverine when he's like holding the picture frame and he's like looking all sad? I think that was to Pan Street most of last year. Every time Sovereignty won a big race, he's just sitting there like, oh no, out of sight, out of mind. But yeah, now he's back.
Well, that's the big question to be answered. I mean, Sovereignty improved so much after that Florida Derby by the time we got to the Travers. Would Pan Street have made that same incremental improvement through May, June, August as Sovereignty did? I feel like we don't know that answer yet, because we didn't really get it last time in that prep race and I think it was just that, a prep race in the middle of December at Gulfstream, where we had to work a little harder than maybe you wanted to see to beat some overmatched rivals. But I mean, I'll pull up the chart here. I mean, we did see a horse come out of that race last week, Solo Venturi, who stretched out, improved his buyer by 13 points in victory. So maybe the race was a little better than it looked at first glance. And when I was watching that replay, Gino, and I'll pull it up as I'm talking here as I try to multitask, I thought this horse maybe didn't look fully fit. He is a larger, chunky, heavier horse.
Yeah.
He looked a little chunky to me. And I was watching, I think you could watch one of his workouts before the last race. And I watched a couple of his workouts since this last race. And to me, he just looks like a horse where the light bulb was gone on. He's tightened up. I'm sure you watched his last workout, which was in company with Saudi Crown, who probably is not the same Saudi Crown that we saw running those triple-digit buyers a couple seasons ago, but Pan Street was going much better than Saudi Crown in that workout. It kind of dusted him. So he feels like a horse that is really stepped forward for having this race under his belt, and I'm expecting him to do a lot better in here. And in this race, I had trouble making cases for a lot of horses, and I actually think 7-2 is probably a fair price.
David, I completely agree with you. I mean, I don't have a whole lot to add to that. Saudi Crown actually was 5th in this race last year too. He showed the way, was part of the early pace. I just think the race sets up really well for him. It was a perfect shake the rust off race. As you pointed out, the workouts have been excellent. He looks really good in the morning. And from a trip standpoint, I think he gets a really nice trip in here because on paper, I mean, we could see Full Serrano go into the lead. British Isles could be forward. Disco Time, curious what he does. Banishing, I think they'll want to take him back, but he is stretching out from sprint races. So if he was more forward just by default, it wouldn't shock me. I mentioned him in there. Skippy Longstocking, Madaket Road, Captain Cook, and Mika. I think they all want to be really close to the lead.
Yeah, I mean, of all those horses, the one that probably needs the lead is Mika, and he drew the worst post of all of them, post 10. He's got to send out of there. And you know, Gino, I mean, trying to clear to the front from post 10, going 9 furlongs at Gulfstream is no easy feat because they go right into that clubhouse turn. So I wonder how aggressive they're going to have to be with that horse. And just the fact that he gets sent could really force this pace. So I do feel like they're going to be moving up front. I'm a little worried for Disco Time drawing the rail. I would have been less worried about Disco Time if he was outside because I think he can rate, but having all these horses cross over in front of him is going to be somewhat unfamiliar for him. So that's a bit of a worry for me, but it does make me skeptical, Gino, of horses like Full Serrano and Madikit Road, where I already question their ability to get 9 furlongs. And if they have to try to get 9 furlongs in a fast-paced situation, that just could be really tough on them.
I think there are 3 or 4 horses whose only chance to win would be if they were clear on the lead. And I don't know if any of them are going to be clear on the lead. I listened to your preview with Mike Beer, and Mike was kind of pointing that out, how there are a few of these horses that I just don't know if 1 1/8 is the right trip for them. And I don't know if they're going to get the right setup in the race either. So it kept coming back to Pan Street looking really good on paper. A horse who you mentioned that I will want to use in some of my exotics as well is Banishing, because he's just solid. And I could see him sitting, middle pack, maybe sitting 5th or 6th, somewhere in that range, getting a jump on some of the deep horses. We don't see many horses like this, David. This is going to be his 13th race in a 12-month period. It just doesn't happen very much anymore.
No, and part of me would be really here for the social media reaction when David Jacobson won the Pegasus World Cup, because it just seems like a ridiculous proposition. But I mean, you have to respect the fact that this horse just shows up every time and does it no matter company or distance. And I mean, yeah, he's stretching out, but he's not some speed horse. Whether he's last or whether he's 6th or 7th early, I mean, he's going to be benefiting from whatever pace develops. So can he get 1 1/8 against company like this? I don't know. But if I had to bet a horse underneath, if I was like keying underneath in trifectas, he's a horse that I would definitely use in that way because he just reliably shows up. Gino, we kind of do have to address the
White Abarrio, right?
The white elephant in the room, White Abarrio, who won this race last year. Got back
Breeders' Cup Classic winner, right? Like, he's brilliant when he's on the top of his game. But what do we do with the horse who got scratched on the track right before the Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile? He was supposed to run in the Mr. Prospector, didn't run there. He's had a couple workouts where his pattern's been a little bit off, but he's now worked a few times in a row leading into this race. Like, if he shows up in the gate, they break, and he's like in the mix at his A game, he's going to be a really tough horse here. I don't know if I can just accept that he's going to be that horse, though, right now, David. I don't know if he's going to be able to have that same A game just based on how the last couple months have gone for him.
It's far from ideal preparation. I mean, it would have been okay if they had gotten in that prep of the Mr. Prospector and you had some sense of where he really was at this point. But it just feels like there is so much uncertainty about what's going on with him, whether he's really fit for this race, whether he's the same horse that he once was, whether physical issues that have long been present have taken their toll. Because, the work tab, it's a little strange. Because, I mean, I remember handicapping this race last year, and I did not want to like White Abarrio coming in, but I watched his workouts, and he just had those fast drills. I mean, he was clearly just fine-tuned to put forth his A effort. You could tell he was touting himself in the mornings. And this is a horse that has worked fast prior to his races and run to the fast works. And it's just really odd to see 3 of his last 4 works basically be run in pedestrian time. He does have 1 fast work in there. Unfortunately, there's no video of that work, so you can't see that one, which is the most important one. But it just kind of feels like they're handling this horse with kid gloves after what happened in the Breeders' Cup. And to me, that does not say that he's going to be primed to win a race like this, because from post 11, he's going to have to be at his best, and I don't trust it.
Now, another important question. What price do you think he will be?
I mean, he does have reputation behind him.
Yeah.
I do think Tapan Street is going to be the second choice, and I think White Abarrio will probably be the third choice, somewhere around 6-1. And even that to me is too short. I would need double digits on White Abarrio at this point in his career, so he's not for me in this race because I don't think you're getting 10-1 on him. So he's a toss for me.
Yeah, I agree with you. I prefer, if we're talking about the shorter prices, I much prefer Tapan Street, and then just comparing to White Abarrio, I much prefer Disco Time. Because I agree with you. I think he could be brilliant if he's too short of a price, and if he's, under 2-1 and you have Tapan Street at 7-2, I think that's a viable alternative for a horse who I believe is going to take the step forward. We both hit on Banishing, but my kind of analysis of the rest of this race was I didn't think it was quite as competitive as the other races that we've been looking at. And so I kind of had narrowed down to like 2 or 3 built around Tapan Street.
I'll put it this way, Gino. There's a lot of talent in this race, but I don't think this is the ideal race for a whole lot of horses with talent. And it just feels like the 2 Brad Cox horses are just coming into this race, the Pegasus World Cup, with the ability to handle the situation, and the form cycles to suggest that they are ready to achieve their peaks at the right time. So I know that they're the 2 favorites, but they're the 2 horses for me, and I would lean a little more on Tapan Street. We'll see if he goes down to 5-2 or 2-1. That might be a little low, but I think given the field and the fact that the money has to get spread around a little bit, he'll be 3-1, 7-2, and that's good enough for me to close out this sequence. I'll just mention one more horse, Gino, the number 12, Brother Kenny. He's going to be underneath in trifectas for me because this race could come apart. There's going to be somebody clunking along to pick up pieces. So this horse has run better than it looks a few times. So he's a huge price that I'm going to use somewhere underneath.
So the 13th race will close things out on Saturday at Gulfstream Park. Remember, it'll all get started at 11 o'clock a.m. Eastern time, bright and early on Saturday. Lucia, if we can pull up our graphic about the shopdrf.com for the PPs one more time to show everybody what we've got. 7 graded stakes. You can get DRF picks, clocker reports, past performances, everything you need at shop.drf.com. And we want to thank our sponsor one more time, morningline.io. Unlock access to some of racing's most coveted bloodlines, mares and colts connected to championship pedigrees. Morning Line is a private SEC regulated marketplace where approved participants can trade licensed interests in elite race horses. No ongoing costs. Build your stable or only at morningline.io. David, you pointed out earlier, we have a lot of content and help for the folks on the Daily Racing Forum YouTube to preview this race, this big Saturday.
Yeah, we can only cover so much on this particular handicapping show, but yeah, we have stakes previews of all 8 of these stakes races, horse by horse. We dissect everything, answer all your questions. So make sure to check out those stakes previews on the Daily Racing Forum YouTube channel. And as Gino said earlier, ton of handicapping content available. You want to get those clock reports to really get the lowdown on how all of these horses are working, even the videos that you can't watch. We've got Mike Welsh on site. He's been keeping tabs on these horses. So that is invaluable information to incorporate into your handicapping.
And a big thanks to our friends over at First Racing. We were streaming this on some of the Pegasus World Cup stream as well. So hopefully a few new viewers were able to come in. Make sure you head on over to Daily Racing Forum YouTube, subscribe to our YouTube channel. You'll find a lot of content just like this when we preview some of the big races coming up each and every weekend. David, it's a big one. Good luck to you on Saturday. I hope you crush it with your wagers. Thanks so much to everyone for hanging out with us. Appreciate producer Lucia helping us out, and best of luck to all of you this weekend on Pegasus World Cup Day.